Hi, and welcome to this video. We'll be demonstrating the use of a i1 display in combination with i1 profiler to actually create ICC profiles, display profiles for iOS devices like iPhones and iPads. So normally this is something you cannot do. You cannot create an ICC profile for iOS because your profiling solution has no support for iOS. So we changed that. I made an application called iProfiler, which allows you to use your profiling solution on your Mac to create an ICC profile for your iPhone or iPad. And then once you've created it, it allows you to load images and view them with the accurate ICC profile. So let's dig into what we need. First, I'll share my Mac with you. I've got some things open here. So let me start with i1 Profiler. As an example, I'm using i1 Profiler. You don't need to use i1 Profiler. It would also work with a Spider software solution or a Color Monkey solution or whatever you have to profile your display. If you don't have anything like software and hardware to do that, then this application is of no use to you because you cannot create your own ICC profile. So what else do we need? The i1 Profiler solution normally looks at my Mac screen and measures those colors. Now that's not very useful because we want to measure the colors of our iOS device. So to do that, there is a application which is free, which is called remoteProfiler, and you can find it on AppForce.One. It's a free app, and what it basically does, it is a bridge between the Mac and iOS. So once you've started up iOS, this is running on my iPhone, you can go to Settings, or sorry, go to Measure, and there you will see that it's waiting. So currently the Profiler app is waiting for data. That's because remoteProfiler hasn't started. When I start it, you will see that iProfiler starts to blink rapidly in orange and says receiving. That's the way it should be when you want to measure something. And for that to happen, your iPhone needs to be on the same network as your Mac. And it's easiest to hook up your iOS device, your iPhone or iPad, to your Mac as well with the USB cable, as that will be needed later on. And it also prevents the device from going to sleep. Obviously, you don't need to, you should not have your iPhone go to sleep when you're creating a profile. Also, night shift should not be on, and the other setting should not be on to automatically correct for lighting conditions. So switch those off. iProfiler will tell you to switch those off when you start it up, so it's not difficult. So now that we have a connection between the two, we can just make a profile like we're used to on the Mac. But instead of placing the i1 display on the Mac, we would be placing it on our iOS device. Let me show you how that works. So we will start with choosing display profiling. Then we need to choose the right display. In this case, my display, because I got multiple hooked up to my Mac, is going to be the HDMI display. But it really doesn't matter which one you use. So let's use this one for now. If you have multiple screens, make sure that your iProfiler runs on the main screen because that's where remoteProfiler will be looking at. So in this case, my main screen is this one. And there are some settings. I won't go into explaining all the settings in this video. There's a separate video on i1 Profiler, which explains all the settings that it can do. What I will tell you is that you should choose a lighting condition. The default is D65, which is 6500 Kelvin, which is also close to the native behavior of a iPhone if you don't have any color managed application running on it. D50 is often used for printing. In fact, it's a standard for printing. So if you are into printing and you create your pictures to go to print, then it makes sense for you to have a profile on your Mac that's D50. And if you have a D50 profile on your Mac, then it would be nice if you could also have a D50 profile on your iOS device. So that's what we'll do. For now, we'll go in the middle and use D55 just to show you that we can add one because the D50 is already on the iPhone. As I can show you, if we go to settings, there's already a D. I need to refresh that. So there's a D65 and a D50 on there, and we're going to be making a D55. So we'll go back to measure, and we will choose D55 here. Now for luminance, don't leave it to native, because native means you use the maximum brightness of your screen that it has, and you cannot sustain that over the years. So choose a standard. If you think 160 is too low, use a custom value, but 160 is a nice standard to work with. Then if you use the advanced mode of iOneProfiler, you could also set a contrast, which I would advise you to do because the native contrast of each monitor is different. So try to choose a value that can be used on every monitor so you can have even behavior on all your displays. So next step is to actually start. Let me make this a little bit bigger. This is what the colors are that's going to be sent to the device. We chose a small chart. Let me go back 1 second. So the standard mode uses always a small chart. If you go to advanced mode, you can use a medium and large chart. Medium is somewhat useful because you have more measurement points. Large just takes very long. So I would recommend use medium if you have some time. If you're in a hurry, then use the small one. So when we start the measurement, the software will tell us to rotate the device. Now before we do that, I will decrease the size of the window a little bit so we can also see our other devices still. I'll make it a little bit smaller and then put this one on top. So it wants me to rotate the protection cap off the lens, and then it wants me to place it on the Mac screen, but I don't want to do that because I want to make a profile from my iPhone. So I'll place it on my iPhone. And as you can see, the iPhone is displaying the color that's on my Mac and has a brightness slider, which I will use in a second. So let me first start off by setting that brightness to minimum value of 50. I'll explain why when we go to the next step. So now that we do next on iOneProfiler, it will try to find the measuring device and see if it's actually connected to the screen, yes or no. If it's not, it would be complaining that it cannot find the device. So it does the red, green, and blue check and then does a brightness check. And that's why I reset the brightness to 50, because now my brightness on my iPhone is actually too low compared to the standard. I would like to have a 160 candela per square meter. So I can now use the slider on iProfiler to put it back to a value that's closer to the right value. I don't remember what it was, so I'll have to just slide it up a little bit. Oh, that's perfect. Okay, well, that's easy. If you don't get to the right value, there's a plus and minus, which will allow you to do little steps. So plus is 1 step up and minus is 1 step down. And once you have the check mark in green, you can proceed to the next step. And now we will actually be measuring the profile on our iOS device, although iOneProfiler is thinking it's measuring the colors from the Mac. So this takes a while. And this is 118 colors that it will be measuring. Meanwhile, I can explain some things. The brightness setting on iProfiler is actually a display brightness setting. So if you change the setting in iProfiler, it will be a generic brightness setting that is applied throughout your iPhone. So bear in mind that if you change your brightness because you're in a outdoors environment and change it to maximum, or it's late at night and you turn down the brightness, then if you want to go back to iProfiler, um, you should reset the brightness. If you quit iProfiler and then relaunch it, it will remember the last used brightness setting. So next time I open it, it will start at brightness 66%. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that you have to check if the receiving light is still blinking rapidly. Basically, every time it's blinking, it's receiving new data from remoteProfiler. So that means that there's still connection going on between those two. And as you can see, there's a little bit of a delay between the colors as they are sent to the Mac and before they are synchronized on the remoteProfiler and the screen shared, but it doesn't take that long. And in real life, of course, you wouldn't be showing the video of your iPhone, so the bandwidth would be a little bit bigger to do the measurements. Once you've completed the measurements, then it's a good thing to look at the measured patches if they match. I'll explain in a minute, but if there's a complete error because the communication breaking down, then you will see colors that are completely off. So for instance, it is expecting to see red and it sees black. So the top left corner of the patch is red and the actual color that it measured was black. That's obviously not going to create a good ICC profile, so then you have to stop the measurement and restart and check your connection between your phone and your network, if it's on the same Wi-Fi and if your Mac is hooked up to the same Wi-Fi. I'd also recommend to not run any other applications when you're doing this, because it just allows more processing power to the applications that are working right now and will make it just go a little bit faster. So why are we doing this in the first place? Well, the advantage is that we now have a brightness on our phone, which is the same as on our Mac. That's nice because then we can compare the brightness. So if we have the same image on it, we can compare brightness. The other thing that we will be able to do is once we're finished is show an image and then actually make it the same on the iPhone as it is on our Mac, which is of course handy. So if you have pictures on your iPhone and you want to show them the way they will be um, reproduced on the device with the profile that you selected, then you can do that. And before you were stuck with the native behavior of iOS, which does not have color management embedded. So it just displays a color, but all iPhones can be different, all iPads can be different, and there is no real management going on. So it's done with the measurements. I can rotate the cap back to its protection position. And then I can click on next. And we will now check if all the patches make sense. So as you can see, all the colors are logical. So there's no black here when there's red here. So everything worked. We did not have any delays that would cause issues in the creation of the ICC profile. So we can proceed to the next step. We could also now stop remoteProfiler because we won't be measuring anymore. And as soon as I do that, you see it starts to display weighting and is red. So now in iOneProfiler, we can just choose a name. And I would recommend using a name that is easy to remember. So I will call this iPhone D55, and this is 160 Candela.icc. It had ICC, but I deleted that. And then we'll just save profile. And okay. And you might have noticed that the display changed a little bit. That's something I forgot to mention. Before you start this process, you should remember what the profile is that is actually active on your Mac, because we're basically overriding it, because iOneProfiler installs this profile by default as your new Mac profile, because it thinks it's just created a Mac profile. But that's okay for the video now. So just go back to your system settings once you're done. And on the displays, go to your Mac display and check that the profile that you had earlier is still the same. So for me, this is not displayed correctly because I have multiple screens, but you would see on your Mac that it changed to the new profile that we made if you have just one display on your Mac. So now that we have the profile created, we need to transfer it to our iPhone because it's no use if we have it on a Mac only. So to do that, we can minimize iProfiler, and we will just open a Finder. And when we open the Finder, you can, when you have your iPhone connected through a USB connection, then you can see your iPhone on locations. So under locations is my iPhone. And if I open that, it opens a window, and that has a tab called Files. And under Files, there is iProfiler because it's allowing to share files with to and from your iPhone. And what we'll do is we will go to our profile that we just created, and I have a standard folder where they are stored. So there's the profile we just created, and we will simply drag that to iProfiler. That's the way you install a profile. And now when I minimize these windows and go to settings on iProfiler, I have to do that on the device itself, and do refresh here, then it will check if there's a new profile on there. And as you can see, there's now a iPhone D55 160 candela profile. So we can leave that on and go to view. And then we can select a picture. I'll just select a demo picture. And what you will see now that this image looks a bit more warm than it does on the standard display because we chose a D55 profile. We created a D55 profile, which is more yellow. And to match the display, we could actually use the chromatic adaptation slider. So when we select the profile D55, we can use a slider to set how much of the D55 we're actually applying on the iOS device. And this is a manual slider because this process is not standardized. So chromatic adaptation is a way that allows us to have a manual correction between what we see on our Mac and what we see on our iOS device. And you will set this once, and it can usually be a value that's somewhere in between 60 and 65. 100% is a bit over the top. 0 is too cool. Then you wouldn't see much of a difference between D65 and D55. But once we've set it to D65, you can view the image, and it actually is showing up warmer and more like my Mac image is showing than it did without the application. So about just shows you that there is information on AppForce.One / iProfiler on this application. And a view allows you to select multiple images so you can view multiple at the same time. And you can swipe through them like you would normally do when you are in your own photos selection. So that's it. This is, of course, not a way to make all your other applications color managed because we just created a profile and wrote an app that uses that profile. So there is no way you can use this profile within your photo collection other than through iProfiler. You cannot use Photoshop and do accurate color management because that's also just showing D65. But of course, this is a first step to getting somewhere where you can actually rely on your phone to show the correct colors, which is for someone that does color management on their Mac, of course, a nice thing to be able to do. If you have any questions, or if something doesn't work for you, feel free to contact me. If it doesn't work at all, then you can always get a refund from the App Store if you find out it doesn't work at all for you. So you don't have to feel like I'm stealing your money, because I don't want to do that. I just offered something that wasn't possible before. We might be working on a version for Android, because Androids have this problem a lot more than iOS devices, because colors on Android devices can go all over the place. So it'd be nice if we could do the same on Android, but that will take some time. And we might also be including a remote profiler for Windows, because that's basically um, just as much work. But we figured out it doesn't make a lot of sense to um, do a remote profiler on Windows first, because if you have an iPhone, then the chances are that you have a Mac and not a PC. So this made more sense. Okay, thank you for watching, and if you have any comments, feel free to email me or leave a comment on the YouTube video here. Thank you for watching, and take care. Bye-bye.